Alright, we've got an interesting assortment this week. This one is actually packaged from Japan. You know, one of y'all mentioned it, and I decided, yeah, you know what? I have not imported something from Japan in a while, and this one has subtitles, and it's possible that there's a Kickstarter campaign for this one. And I forget, because this is Macross, or it should be. The trick is, you know, can I open this without accidentally faxing my address or something like that. And that should do it. Huh, unfortunately, I cannot read Japanese well enough in order to tell you that I remember the name. You know, that's one of the hard things about getting old is, sometimes it's just too easy to forget. This is Do You Remember Love? Which is different than what is being worked on. That was Macross 2 Love Again or something like that. Well, anyways, this is import from Japan. Trying to think if there's anything here I can read out loud. So, first of all, you got the 4K Ultra HD, and then you got the Blu-ray. 4K Ultra HD, as far as I can tell, is not region locked, so we don't have to worry about that. Although I also don't see this saying that it's region A anywhere on there, so even that's pretty good. We should have English subtitles, and I guess it's talking about stuff here. Well, it's supposed to be English dubbed, so worst case, if it isn't, it's not the only not English dubbed, English subbed, and if it isn't, that's okay. So yeah, I think we looked at all sides of it, so let's take a peek on the inside. That is definitely a very Macross image there. A lot of Japanese text there, and that's okay. And that's kind of what makes it cool collectible. And on the inside, we have an insert. Ultra HD. Blu-ray. So this is the 4K disc, and this is the normal Blu-ray. Pretty cool. And while I can't play the 4K on my Blu-ray player, I really should get a 4K player, even if I don't set it up. I don't know. I guess. I was really curious about it. I guess that's why I opted to do that before I opened these other two things. The thing is a very technical term. But let's, yeah, open them for real. Truth of the matter is I just kind of forgot I had them for that brief period I was opening the other thing. But, yeah, we have Nasu, Summer in Andalusia. In any good race, it always comes down to the last leg. Let's get this plastic off first. The case itself is in a bit of a condition. Let's get that back in here. Went a little deeper in there than I thought it would. Hopefully I didn't scratch the disc. If I did, I guess I can order a new one. Alright. There's the loose disc. Thing about bicycle, regions A, B, and C, and Amigo. Okay, cool. I see, there's some loose plastic there. set it here so I have a chance of actually finding it again. But yeah, let's see what the back tells us, because it looked like 2 audio streams. Okay, both Japanese, English subtitles. Interesting stuff. Bonus features. Let's lead. Original Japanese teaser and trailer. Interview with writer-director Kitaro Kosako. US release trailer. Interesting. I really like the sketched style. Next up, A Sign of Affection. Guess we can look at the back because it's not all shiny. That's regions A and B. So there's an English dub for this. 300 minutes with 24 minutes of extra bonus runtime. Read between the signs. Bonus features. Mini anime, promo videos, textless opening and ending songs. Different underneath the slipcover. That is very nice. You know, I don't watch as many romantic stuff. This is a nice, pleasant little release. And it looks neat. I don't know if it's actually good. But, you know, it got dubs that people at least thought it had a chance of being considered good. So, could be. Nothing on the inside. So, just a pretty cozy little release. Very nice. Then, last but not least, we have my instant death ability is overpowered. Which was a bit more watchable than I thought it would be from its premise. Its premise gave the feeling that it would be a one-trick pony. And to a certain degree it is, but it actually keeps it fun, I thought. Let's see, there's an English dub. That is English, right? Focus camera. English and Japanese, so there's an English dub. Region A only, 12 episodes on 2 discs. I guess it's got the special features there. Clean opening, closing, and web previews. Pretty straightforward. And I see a blank interior, so we got disc 1, disc 2. Oh. Yeah, this is Sentai. Who released this? Crunchyroll. Because it's kind of interesting how the insides of both of these have only white. They're both dubbed too. Anyways, interesting stuff. Here's this week's physical anime collection update. Alright. It feels like a kind of small list because stuff is wrapping up and the list is shrinking and the next anime season is about to begin. I think there's maybe something that might have 2 episodes tomorrow. The Reborn as a leader of a galactic empire. Evil galactic empire, maybe even. I don't know. Looks curious. It was something I was curious about to want to at least check out. But putting that aside, we've still got the stuff here. And not everything finished. Some of it, you know, has a little more episode to go. Some of it... Anyways, going on. Yeah, I'll talk about that last. You know, because obviously I watched Arcane with my Friday friend. But let me talk about that last and get through anime. Possibly the Greatest Alchemist of All Time, episode 12. I'm trying to remember if this one ended or not. It's interesting how I remember so little of it every update here. And I thought it was okay. Maybe not great. Maybe, yeah, okay. Did I want to talk about that or not? No, I guess, I don't know. You know, for the most part, you know, it did neat stuff. I think the way it built stuff up was entertaining enough. Probably could have done better, but yeah, fine. Magic Maker, How to Make Magic in Another World, episode 11. I guess I remember some of the action-y stuff that sort of happened. And I don't think we got a resolution to the events, just, I think, a resolution to the conflict, possibly. But, okay, I guess. It did imply that there's more to the magic of the world than what our main character knew. But I don't know. Yeah, it's been plus or minus. ReZero, Season 3, Episode 65. Let's see. That happened and that happened. I think some of that stuff was a little more obvious in terms of what would happen. You know, they're fighting Sin Archbishops of the Witches cult, which, you know, it carries with it, oh, that's strange, or that's mysterious, or that's unknown. What exactly to make of this? But some of the stuff was a little more known than I thought. I thought it was a fine episode, but I guess it's interesting because the last handful of them had things to them that felt like more conclusions. I'm glad this one didn't, because there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of important stuff, and if we just keep getting conclusions to a whole lot of notable stuff happening at every episode, then it does feel a little meaningless. It is something that, for this stretch of ReZero, feels weird, but yeah, I got a really itchy nose there for some reason. Oh well, nice episode. I guess I'm not quite sure how many more episodes are left before this season is over, but hopefully it's kind of a complete satisfaction-y sort of package. Guess we'll have to see. Daily Life of Middle-Aged Online Shopper in Another World, Episode 11. Okay, I guess. A little revenge can feel nice. Maybe it's about right. Hard to say for certain, but I guess it was what it was. I can't help but feel like maybe there's more to it. Just a very strange show, I guess. Not quite done yet. I guess I don't remember if there's something it's ending towards. Dr. Stone, Science Feature, Season 4, Episode 11. A very action-y episode with a cliffhanger ending, I would say. But fun enough. Interested to see what happens in the next episode and what that means. Welcome to Japan, Miss Elf, Episode 11. We got to meet our main character's grandpa and gain some insight into, I guess, just his life in general as a kid to a little degree. But it's some of that more wholesome, they're in Japan portions of the show, which I kind of appreciate, because I don't know that we have a 100% story outside of that. I mean, I think they introduced some stuff that's kind of the main plot, but it's it feels a little detached, I guess. Maybe the main plot isn't this show's strength, but it at least feels like it feeds into the thing where it's just like, okay, we keep getting to see Miss Elf experience stuff about Japan, and it spaces it out a bit, so it's enjoyable. Why do I feel like I skipped something? I skipped From Bureaucrat to Villainous, Dad's Been Reincarnated, Episode 11. Okay stuff. A couple of neat scenes in there, but I think it's more of a preparation for the next episode. Guess we'll see what I feel about the whole show when it's in. It had some good, strong, good feeling moments in it, but I guess outside of that, it's hard to say if it felt like it necessarily had a story, I guess. We'll see what I say after the next episode. Solo Leveling Season 2, Arise from the Shadows, Episode 24. So I thought this might be the last episode of the season, but turns out it's not. There's an episode after this one. And I think that was good, because good action in this episode. I appreciate how in this season, our main character, like, some of the draw they've made for a lot of the battling is he takes what feels like it should be a hopeless situation in a raid that's gone wrong, and he just turns it into a fucking battlefield. And here at the end of this, it was already a battlefield, and his presence doesn't quite do that. There's quite a number of things that they're doing here near the end of this season that are just like, you know what, I went to bed thinking, oh yeah, they really ought to do that, don't they? And I think the way they did it isn't the way I would have imagined them to do it, but it's, oh yeah, that had to happen. They did it, and they did it in the right way. I've seen some people commenting that they thought that the battle that happened in this one was just put the anime better than it was executed in the light novel, or maybe even the original. Sorry, the original was the light novel. The manga, the manhwa, whatever you want to call that thing. But you know, I don't know for certain, but I can say that there was something about it that was just nice. And it's interesting because there's a lot of this show, this season, where I think the most interesting thing we could be seeing would be characters' reactions to a lot of stuff, and they give us bits and pieces of that, but they also deliberately don't give us that because the show's like, I think it knows that stuff is good and kind of gives you some of the important ones here and there, but it more importantly focuses on what the main character is doing. This is where a thing where I guess I've been kind of debating how much I want to talk about this, because there's some analysis I've mentally had with a philosophical concept that I don't agree with. Maybe you've heard of it, the Bechdel test, and I can't say for certain right now 100% about why I've historically not agreed with it, other than it seems to be a very deliberately constructed way based on something that's not necessarily wrong, but deliberately made sexist, I guess, for lack of better words. And I think the reason it's stuck around to some degree, even though I haven't heard the name in a while, so hopefully people abandon that and they can talk about the better thing, is there is a hint of truth to it. Like, if I remember correctly, the idea is you measure the, I don't know how sexist the show is or something like that by making sure the female love interest talks about 300 things, and it's like, it's so narrowly defined, it's not actually helpful, because a better analysis of something sort of like that would be more along the lines of, does it feel like this show only created, or maybe this story is a better way to put it, did this story just create a character to inflate our main character's ego, or suck their dick, or smell their ass, or whatever insulting imagery you want to do there? And, you know, like, Greatest Alchemist is kind of a really good example of this, because it really does feel like a lot of the characters were very conveniently designed in order to prop up the main character. And no, it's not even just like the girls, it's also the guys. It's how they structure the world that's really the thing that makes that show weaker, and I think people enjoy other aspects of it despite that stuff. And I think one of the plus points to Solo Leveling is there's definitely moments in there where the show is like, is that really Song Jinwoo's power? And enough people do it that it feels like you could call it that sort of thing. But I think the show works because while characters have moments like that, and those moments make sense for those characters to have that, they do things that are just like, I'm here doing this thing that I've done forever, and I'm just planning on the stuff that we've been planning on since the beginning of the first season. And they're not saying, we're doing all this, but wouldn't it be nice if that Song Jinwoo was here? And another person's like, yeah, if only we had Song Jinwoo here. And, you know, because there isn't stuff like that, it does feel like these other characters really are just witnessing this main character get to be awesome. And I think that's one of the things that makes it really acceptable is, yeah, it just feels like it's got a good balance there. And I do think that that's kind of a good tool for just analyzing shows, because there's been a lot of shows where it's like, does it feel convenient? So if we take Magic Maker, for example, it doesn't quite feel as strongly about that as like Greatest Alchemist, but there's still an element of it that feels like it's somewhere in that. Some of these characters feel like they could be just conveniently designed for the main character, but they don't feel as strong as Greatest Alchemist. But for some reason, it feels similar as a show, and I think that's mostly because of other factors. So, like, you know, like that's a tool you can use to measure to say, yeah, some elements of that show definitely feel like it was designed for our main character's story and not like they're independent characters in the world. But there's other weird things about Magic Maker that kind of make it maybe not work as good as Greatest Alchemist. I don't even remember what the scores for both of those are, but that's just an interesting thing to measure. And I wouldn't say solo leveling is perfect about this, because in some ways you actually have the opposite direction. I think a good example of this is in episode 18. You know, I've referenced that one quite a bit because that is a very fun episode. But there is truth to be said about, okay, there is an S rank who arrived who's like, what the fuck is going on here? I'm like, I think that's very enjoyable to, you know that they're thinking about that. They don't show it to us very strongly, just a little bit here and there. But it does raise a question, okay, but this person is used to rating. So are we given the insight into why our main character is still the only person being really fucking awesome right now? And I think there's a lot of reasons you could come up with that justify it, but that's also something where if you're kind of having to come up with those reasons and the show's not really giving it to you, then I guess you could say that's a point off. But, you know, overall, Solo Leveling Season 2 has been awesome, and even if the final big action piece for the season has completed, and I don't see how they would include something else in the next episode. The next episode should really resolve the conflict here, then introduce us to what is the state of the world now. Because I think Season 1 could end where it ended, because at that point our main character's powers and abilities were just completely unknown, and so where he stood at in the world was really a personal thing. But here in Season 2, just fucking camera on the situation. It's like there's no way that it's not going to get more attention. And so it's interesting because in a lot of ways this season has kind of served a similar functionality to Battle Shonen's tournament arc stuff. I saw a YouTube video that was talking about that, how that's really useful for analyzing, you know, where do characters' abilities stand in the grand scheme of things. And this wasn't a tournament, this wasn't a tournament arc, but I think the reason a lot of the action works out is because it serves that same sort of purpose. And it's surprising that it does it multiple times and is entertaining every time. And I think the reason that works is because it's not a one-trick pony. In fact, most of the battles, really just almost every sequence in the battle is just something completely different than what it's done in every other battle in this entire season. And that's pretty impressive. It's like the main character has a lot of powers, access to do a lot of interesting things. And it's not a lazily directed show. It just makes sure that, you know, that stays interesting. And we need to see, okay, what is the state? Now that more and more people in the world know who he is, now we need to know what the state of things are at the end of this season based on something more than just himself. And there's also a lot of support that's been the plan the whole time, because the first season gives you a lot more of the stats and screens that he's seeing. This second season, sometimes you're lucky to even see something. It'll flash on the screen for a couple of seconds, but engaged viewers, which I feel like this show's done a good job of keeping people engaged for a lot of the reasons I've talked. Engaged viewers are like, oh, did that just happen? Holy shit, show. Whoa, slow down. You only gave me 3 seconds to process that. Now, oh, Jesus Christ. but it's been fun. And the end of this penultimate episode, because I think it's the penultimate one. There's no way there's an entire another fucking season. If there is, Jesus. I mean, there's probably going to be another season because, other things this show has done good is it started peeling back important parts of the layer to say, all right, here's why it isn't just a convenient thing. There's something else going on here. Aren't you a little intrigued? I'm like, well, the more you reveal, the more intrigued I am. Definitely looking forward to the last episode. I don't see how they can do it wrong because literally all they have to do is just finish resolving this conflict and show us everything else. Show us the impact of the world. Don't even have to show us him. Even though, I like when main characters are on screen. I like when all of his summons are on screen. They're fun. It's been fun. It's a good show. So yeah, when people, my opinion of the show is still, the first season was good to great. Season 2 is phenomenal. And I'd be surprised if they somehow managed to fuck it up in this last episode because they're not trying to end the show. Which I guess makes a good segue to Zenshu, episode 12, where I wouldn't say they fucked it up. Not at all. I'd say the problem, though, is that there's just something off about the way the ending was presented that doesn't hook right. Like, it had all the right elements of what needed to be there, but somehow it didn't have the impact it should have. And I feel like there's something about the way it was impacted, that the way it was implemented, that's to blame. Like, maybe they were originally planning to have a 40-minute final episode and they didn't have the budget for that, so they could only make it regular 20-minute episode or something like that. If somebody told me that, I'd say, well, it actually maybe kind of feels like that. Which is unfortunate because it had everything in place for having a really touching, impactful ending. And maybe other people actually felt that. So I guess you could say that, for me personally, I'd say it was a pretty great series. Ending was a little weak. But if you start watching the show and you enjoy the show, I think you'll at least be satisfied with it had an ending and it did certain things that, I think that's what it needed to be doing at the ending of all things. But I know like a coworker who dropped it because he mostly didn't like the main character's personality, which is fine. She's supposed to be a bit abrasive and, not everybody can take that per se. And it's clearly a show where it's about her maturing through that, I guess, to a degree. And I guess that's the main problem with the ending, is if you're hoping for something that's like, you want to watch this because by the end of the show, you'll be like, I'm so satisfied with where she ended up. It's like, I think you'll more scratch your head and say, I guess I understand how she got there. I just wish they tell the story in a way that I felt it stronger. And again, that might just be me, but that's my opinion of the show. And it's interesting because now I can talk about the non-anime thing on the list. That's Arcane Season 2. Because next week is a One Piece release, and after that my friend is going kayaking down the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon. Basically it means we're going to watch One Piece next week, pretty much no matter what this week, sorry. And so we high prioritize pushing through the remaining episodes of Arcane Season 2 to finish it off. And I say it's interesting how there's similarities to Zenshu in that regard. So if I were to describe this show overall, I'd say it's a good show with great moments, but the ending isn't quite there. And I think the two problems I have with that are that it almost felt like it was building up a theming, but then I'm not sure that it was, especially since the theming it would have or should have been building up should have been Vi and Jinx, basically. But it didn't. And the conflict it had at the end, I don't know that it felt like it had anything to do with the two of them. Like, it didn't even necessarily need to be where they began with. It could have been where they ended, needed to represent kind of a central idea, I think, in the show. And because of that, because it doesn't have that, I guess it's just, again, a good show with great moments. And I think one thing that kind of gives an idea of why the ending doesn't work is there's a big battle. And the reason why there needs to be a big battle makes a lot of sense. There is big enough things at stake such that the big battle at the end should be there. So that's a good setup. But what doesn't make it great, in my opinion, is ultimately the things they had happen in that battle had almost nothing to do with how that conflict built to its end. It makes it a lot of maybe fan servicey stuff. I'm not sure if it was that bad. It could have been. But it does mean that, I don't know, it feels like a show that had a chance to have a really good theming to tell it across 2 seasons. At the end of season 1, I didn't necessarily know where it would be at the end of season 2. But I could have seen season 2 doing that. But I guess instead season 2 had a curveball. And it didn't feel like that much of a curveball, which kind of, again, leads back to season 1 feeling like maybe it didn't have a destination in mind like it played out it needed to. So, overall, I think it's worth the time to watch. I think some people are going to enjoy it more than me, more than I did. I don't know if my friend's opinion is the same, or maybe he has a different opinion, or maybe he did, but he's like, yeah, I guess what Giga said kind of makes sense, and I guess I kind of agree. Hard to say for certain, but yeah. If anybody says, oh yes, there's great moments in there, definitely 100% sure. Lots of neat artsy moments, neat fight scenes, like even without like there's even this thing where, okay, you have a character who has a weapon that is basically a slot machine. And this may actually be something from the game. And I think that's actually fine. And it's impractical. But it actually does make that encounter fun. You know, that's pretty great. And, you know, I think there are people who are maybe fans of the characters who would definitely find more elements of this to be great just because, you know, they like seeing all this, and I think that's pretty good, you know, because again, you know, as somebody who's not familiar with League of Legends stuff, I could just watch it and say, yeah, it's good. I think it was worth my time. I guess anybody else can make of that what they want. I'm not sure if I have anything else to talk about. I did flip through Unwanted Undead Adventure, you know, just go through all the episodes, and that was actually a pretty good show. I like that show. You know, I just got it last week and had to put it on the pile over there of isekai crap. This one I wouldn't call it isekai or crap because it's actually just medieval fantasy. I'm putting that under isekai. That's really bad. So someone else put something under isekai and it's like, that's not an isekai, it's just a straight up fantasy. But I'm digressing so much. Lots of stuff. Hopefully y'all have enjoyed my babbling. Yeah, I can't think of anything else to really talk about. Y'all have a nice week.